Hi guys, welcome to Second Perspective. This is another QQ episode. My name is Paul Weston.
I'm Nathan Smith.
And this is going to be the discussion for Sicario. If you have not seen the film, we are going to be talking about the film in a spoiler manner. So
Spoilers, red light.
So stop it if you haven't. Other than that, a really quick synopsis of our review. He gave an A+. I gave an A. I really wanted to give an A+, but I was a little hesitant. And the film was great. That's really what you need to know. Other than that, we're going to start getting into some discussions about the film. Is there something in particular you want to bring up? I know that you're hiding something from me off camera.
We'll get to that. Let's just talk. Yeah. So I mean, let's just talk about this movie like right from the beginning. I want to say that like the first, I mentioned it in the non-spoiler talk that we just had, but the first 30 to 45 minutes, like the first kind of segment of this movie, from when it begins, and then the opening raid on the house, but then more importantly, this sort of caravan sequence where they're going into Mexico, which she didn't know anything about, and that whole segment, as a viewer, you're very much in Emily Blunt's her character Kate. You're very much living her experience in the sense that you don't really know exactly what's happening, but it is absolutely intense. Like, it's an experience. And I was totally thrilled by this. I think this is like a really interesting way to begin a movie, is to just throw the viewer right into the deep end with very little information. And the information they have is kind of wrong. Like, they're told something and you're like, okay, this seems a little weird. And then it just goes into a completely different direction.
Okay, so I have a question for you then.
Yes.
Because I do agree with you. Like, if you can execute this is probably the best way to do something, because an audience will always be sort of pulled along to the next moment.
It's a case-by-case basis. I wouldn't say it necessarily is the best, but
usually, right? If you can execute this is a wonderful way to go through a film, right? It's just sort of leading an audience along. But there's always a risk of not having enough information, and then the audience becoming just bored or angry or just what have you from a lack of information. So what did Sicario do that made sure it worked, instead of us just being like, we're watching a bunch of cars driving past a bridge, why do we care about this bridge? Why there's so many bird's eye view shots? I
think it's a big part of it is making sure, like, Denis Villeneuve was very careful to make sure that we are living her experience. She doesn't know anything more than us. I think that's when it gets frustrating, when characters, especially the protagonists, have clear, direct motivation to do things, but we as the viewer are sort of left behind. We're not sure why they're doing what they're doing, what they're after, what their goals are. In this case, she doesn't really know what her goals are. I mean, you get the beginning segment where, in the FBI, I believe we're told that she is part of a hostage rescue team. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But she's FBI SWAT. And once this raid, is completed and the bomb goes off and all these things happen, I think something kind of goes off in her head where it's like, I want to get behind all of this. I want to know who's doing this. And that sort of compels her to go into this questionable scenario after she meets Josh Brolin. Everything from then on, once she meets him, is very questionable, very shady. She's not really sure even what agency he works for. And I think it's interesting that we as a viewer aren't even told that. The first thing you'd think would happen when you go into a meeting and someone's there is, hi, my name's so-and-so, I'm from the FBI, I'm from the CIA, I'm from whatever. He doesn't say it. He's sitting there in flip-flops in a suit, and you're kind of just like, okay, who is this guy? And he talks about going into El Paso, I think, and dealing with the cartels. And she's like, well, if it's going to, find whoever put the bomb there and whoever killed these people, let's do it. And I think we just live that experience of this raw intensity. I think that's a good word for this movie. It feels very raw. We're always seeing it through her eyes as a person who's thrown into a situation that is more than she asked for. But she always
goes back.
She does, and that's an interesting thing is, even towards the end of the film, her partner, Reggie, frequently tells her, like, let's just walk away from this. Let's get away from this. But she says, like, no, I have to know what's going on here. I want to know what these people are doing.
Yeah, I
think that's what makes it work for me anyway. And I think, just quickly too, is I think a big part of it is atmosphere. It's a very atmospheric movie. I think part of it is the tone that really drives the movie.
It was interesting that you said you thought it felt raw, and I don't know that that was my experience necessarily. It's just because the shots looked so smooth, so clean. The sound felt very. Everything felt really deliberate for me. And I don't know that I necessarily always like because of that deliberate feeling. I don't know that I got like I got the intensity, but I don't know if I got sort of a raw feeling because like.
Well, it depends on how you want to,
Yeah.
contextualize that word. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but
Yeah, well, it's just that's. It also brings up another thing for me. It's like just the part of the reason why I think I enjoyed so many of these scenes is that each and every shot felt like it led to that each thing was a very clear domino. And like sometimes when I watch a film, I go, okay, you're doing a close up on this guy, and a close up on that guy, and a close up on this person. But even and like a lot of films have a nice establishing shot or whatever, it looks pretty for a moment, basically just tells us where we are and then moves in. But with Sicario, like I believe when it was the shot when they're going into the city. You realize like, oh, we're going into Mexico and we're probably not supposed to be here. And there's like 16 cars, so yeah, okay, we're definitely not supposed to be here. The shot has this one winding road going into this essentially what looks like this concrete jungle, right? And the shot gave me that very. It was pretty, but it also gave me the sense of like, hey, we're about to go into a place that's not good for us, right? And
it's very ominous.
Yeah, right. And yeah,
I think there's a lot of that off the beginning too. I mean, the first time, literally the very first time we meet Benicio, or not meet him, but the first time we see Benicio del Toro's character Alejandro is when Kate is walking up the stairs to board a plane, and we catch a glimpse of Benicio del Toro facing away from us, talking. I think he's talking on a cell phone. I could be wrong about that, but he's preoccupied with something, and he's just sort of in the background, and the plane sort of, takes over the foreground of the shot, and he disappears. It's a very ominous feeling. Like, as soon as you see that this character, there's something about him that we should be interested in, It signifies that right away.
Well, what's also really interesting that they do with the character fairly quickly is, like, the first time that they actually talk, I believe, is after Del Toro falls asleep, right? And the first sort of shot you actually have of him is when he's sleeping and he's like twitching, his arms twitching, and there's an actual very deliberate close-up on that hand, and I feel like for all the things that he does later in the film, it sort of creates this moment of sort of humanity in him because he doesn't say who he is. He basically just says, "Do as I tell you," or he doesn't say anything at all and just does something. And you have to follow him, but it creates this. I mean, you talk to anybody who's had one of those dreams where they're falling and they wake up and they jerk awake. That's kind of a scary moment or feeling. And that's exactly what happens to Del Toro. And we have that moment of, we see him in a moment of vulnerability. And honestly, I really think that that's one of the few moments of vulnerability we actually see from him. And so it's interesting that we get that simultaneously that ominous feeling when he's like, he seems like a bit of trouble, and then literally less than a minute later we see that of him, right? They give us a fairly wide range and usually fairly simple shots.
A lot of this movie kind of you may disagree with this, but it reminded me in sort of tone and atmosphere to things like There Will Be Blood or No Country for Old Men, just in the sense that they're films that are very much about this a sort of descent of knowledge, of trying to understand something that sort of brings you to a reality that's uglier than you want it to be. And I think it's interesting for a character like Kate to be thrown in that because she technically lives this reality every day. I mean, she's part of the FBI, she's part of a SWAT team, she's clearly dealing with people like the cartel, drug dealers, and seeing some pretty terrible things, but the reality of it still goes further than even she knows, than she can comprehend, and it just gets uglier and uglier, and I think the film visually represents that as it goes on. It reminds me a lot of Heart of Darkness, like that story of the further in you go, the more you understand, the worse it gets. It's very powerful stuff.
I Well, I mean, everything that you're saying is it's basically uh, signified in that one shot where it's the horizon, right?
Yes.
Where it's silhouettes and then
That's the shot where they're about to go into the tunnels towards
yeah.
the. This is probably in the last third of the movie,
Mm.
and they're all decked out in their military gear, and then there's this wonderful, probably very expensive shot.
Yeah, it's magic hour. That's the whole time I was thinking.
Magic hour, yeah. Twilight.
Mm.
You know, the sun's descending below the mountains, and you see silhouettes of these figures all decked out in their military garb, and they slowly descend into the blackness.
Mm.
And it's just a very still shot, and it looks amazing. It's wonderful.
Well, something that also sort of cements your whole thing, like descending into hell, is I mean, I might be totally wrong on this, but if I remember correctly, there's actually a gate to hell, or where Hades is, in Greek mythology, and like, they literally just, there's a gate, and then they just they have to walk down through it, and there's a long case of stairs, right?
All hope abandon, ye who enter here.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's just, yeah, I mean, it's very clear that the director was playing on some of that.
I think something that I wanted to just bring up about the tone again, too, before we start diving into more specific things, is I feel there's almost like a sort of mythical quality to this movie, in the sense that it's like, a lot of the times, you know, you watch movies like Zero Dark 30, where it's done in a very procedural way. You're given a lot of information as to how they're doing what they're doing, how they're tracking these people. It's a process that leads up to a moment. But Sicario is just very much about sort of living the experience the entire way through, and it gives it a sort of biblical quality. Like, this could be happening anywhere at any time, and you're sort of watching this character in this situation, and it all feels very grand and very incomprehensible to the human mind. Like, you're never given the behind the scenes of the people in the drones who are watching them. You know, you see some drone footage and stuff like that of the military soldiers on the ground making their way in, but you're not. You're just always part of the situation. They never remove you from it, and I think it gives it a very sort of, mythical quality is the word I want to use.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't know. For me. It's kind of difficult to kind of break this film down, other than just sort of like stare at it in awe. And I usually just ask questions of like, okay, why does this work? Why does that work? Because, I mean, even okay, the one thing that I did sort of, I might be jumping a little bit ahead, is the one thing I was sort of like on was the casting of Shane.
You mentioned this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know the actors. No, it's John
Bernthal?
Bernthal.
I believe that's how you say it.
Yeah, it's the guy from Walking Dead. Without spoiling too much, he's sort of slowly becoming this character actor of, he seems like a good guy. Oh wait, he's not. In the instant that I saw him, especially in the bar where they're coming and like the main characters are trying to relax, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew that they were going to get together, that she thought she was going to be cute, and then something bad would happen. I was not smart enough to sort of go, oh, okay, he's a part of the whole circle, and that he's got bands and everything like that. But that was sort of the one moment where I was kind of, I mean, it could have been. I guess I'm curious if you found sort of the value of casting him.
Well, I mean, this is a question
else.
You have to ask when you're. I mean, like, you look at something like Interstellar. There's a similar situation. They pop. Well, spoilers for Interstellar. Should I spoil?
Yeah. Pause.
If you don't want spoilers for Interstellar because for some reason or another you haven't heard of it or haven't seen it, then stop for just 10 seconds and forward the video.
Yeah.
Is you get a cameo of Matt Damon.
Yeah.
And it just kind of comes up like a good chunk into the movie, like probably like an hour and a half or more into the movie. And suddenly, Matt Damon's in this movie. And it's a question you have to ask yourself is like immediately when you do that, when you cast someone who's known, it immediately signifies some kind of importance. I don't necessarily know if it means, because, very similar to this film, Sicario, is he ends up sort of being an antagonistic force.
Oh, gee, I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just a matter of how you handle it, I think.
Well,
and spoilers for Interstellar.
Yeah. Where would you have gone with that? with his character, like with how quickly and how tight knit the script was, where would you be able to go with that character?
Well, I mean, it really just depends. Like, I didn't necessarily feel quite the way you did. Like, yes, immediately when I saw him, I'm like, okay, fairly well-known actor. Like, he's obviously going to have some importance to the story. But I didn't necessarily know. It wasn't the only option that my mind jumped to that this guy's going to do something bad. There were a few varieties of what I thought.
And that's what I'm asking. What would have been a different variety? Like, there was two things. One, that he was going to be what he ended up being, that some sort of negative antagonistic force, or two, the director would actually play on the fact that I thought it was going to be, and he was going to be the complete opposite.
Well, and that's exactly what it could have been. Yeah. He could have been there on behalf of Josh Brolin to watch over her in some way or something like that. I don't know if it's worth theorizing too much over. I'm not here to rewrite the movie, but I'm just saying it's something you do have to be aware of, but at the same time, maybe there's got to be a reason he was in there, and I do think he's a good actor. So
I guess I'm just saying, like, it's difficult to find much wrong with this film, and like that's probably one of my sort of more nitpicky, but like only really things I can say is that I feel like he didn't have to be in there. There could have been any other actor that could have done that job. So I don't know. I thought you took away from the film just a little bit that way.
I think. Well, actually, let's talk about the performances a little bit. I think. I mean, this is like some of Emily Blunt's best work.
And she's got a pretty
she's got a robust portfolio going on here. I mean, like, her career is taken off really well. I've liked her a lot recently too. In the last 5-6 years, I've seen her in quite a few movies, and I'm steadily becoming more impressed. Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow, she was very good in that, and she's just becoming more and more impressive. And I think she's fantastic in this film. I mean, she goes through a wide range of emotions. She's a very strong character, but she's also in a situation that is totally. She's in over her head for sure. And she's the only woman character in this movie as far as, like, these soldiers or these agents go. Everyone else around her is a male character.
And the other thing I mentioned to you off camera or whatever, but the one thing I really liked about that is that she was a female character, and the film just did not give a shit. It didn't be like, ooh, we have a female character, we have to focus on that. It was literally like she happened to be female. Move on.
Yeah.
And that's so awesome to me. You got, honestly, I feel like you could have swapped and could have made it a guy. I mean, the scene with Shane might be a little more difficult or whatever, but like ultimately the fact that she, like, her gender meant nothing to the stories, and like very few people, like, people's gender didn't. Yeah, because I feel like some films sort of, I don't know, work around that, and
I think it also it lends to a. Like, I mean, she is a female character. She is, from what I understand, she is the team leader of the original FBI team that we see at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so obviously this gives her some motivation because she sees some of her friends get hurt from the bomb that goes off. And she just very much, after seeing the bodies on the wall, which is a horrifying sight, she wants to find out who's doing this. And I think it keeps us... There's something... It almost keeps us alienated from everyone else, because she's the only female, and we as the viewers are only really identifying with her, because everybody else's motivations are in the background. We're not really sure. Josh Brolin, what does he want? Who is he? We don't even know. Benicio del Toro, even worse. Like, who is this guy? What is he doing? Like, he doesn't even seem like he's a government agent. And I think it keeps us alienated from the situation, so we're asking the same questions as her. I think it's a very good choice for casting. I think they did a great job.
I'm going to bring up something that seems a little strange, but I think is fairly relevant, is that whenever Josh Brolin has food in a scene, he's acting that much better. I'm not kidding you at all.
I think, Josh Brolin is just amazing. And I think he plays his character in a way that you probably don't... It seems... he's very nonchalant about everything going on, and it's kind of weird. Like, it's almost... It's unsettling, because, like, they're talking about some weird things. Like, again, you see him in flip-flops in the beginning, in like a high-ranking FBI meeting. And then... They go through all these things, the convoy into Mexico, and he's still joking around. He's still laughing. And he has quite a few funny lines. Don't go into the. She's going into the bank. Like, it's funny, and it's not really a humorous time.
Yeah, well,
but he takes these things with a very large grain of salt.
Yeah, when I think that helps us sort of even, it gives us a little bit more of a connection to the world, or at least knowing, like, there is worse stuff out there. That if this is freaking us out and we're terrified, and the guy that is around it all the time is sort of like, no, I could use a sandwich. Then you're kind of, it just makes it that much more frightening, right? Like what would rattle this character? The one thing I did want to actually stay on the food for just a brief moment.
Oh, sure.
Have you seen Inherent Vice?
No.
There's a one famous scene. It has very little. Like, I won't ruin a whole lot. I mean, Inherent Vice in itself is just a totally confusing movie, which actually might be a really good example of a film that doesn't give you very much information. It becomes become flustered and lost. So that might actually be a neat comparison between the two. But I think it's in the trailer, but he has this scene where he's just absolutely hilarious. And he's eating food, and it's just like...
I recall that, yeah.
Right? And there's also a really key scene at the end of Inherent Vice. He's eating food. And I just sort of... some of his better scenes, especially like when he's talking to Reggie, where... Reggie's talking to Kate. He's like, we need to figure out what's going on. And Kate's like, I tried. I can't figure it out. She goes, do you think you can do better? And Reggie's like, yeah. And he goes, talking. He's like, hey, yo, I need to talk to you. They have a really kind of a really interesting scene with that. He's chewing gum. It's just, the only reason I bring this up is in my experience with actors, there's weird ways of opening actors up. And like some actors just need something to do with their hands. Some prefer when they're moving. Some work better when they're still. And I would take a guess at saying that Josh Brolin, one of the ways to get him to sort of unlock whatever is in there to make him the awesome actor that he is just hand him a piece of gum, hand him a sandwich, whatever. Because, that's my totally unfounded hypothesis that we can't solve or anything.
It's an interesting observation.
But I truly believe that. Just something I thought,
Just when you brought up that scene, too, I think the interesting thing about that, when they're sitting down the illegal immigrants and they're this is just after the convoy scene, or well, it's a little bit after that. But I think the interesting part is when Reggie just says, Matt, we need to talk, and they go aside. This is the first moment where we actually get a little bit like some concrete details on what's going on.
Yeah,
so this is like an hour into the movie, and he finally says, because we don't even know why we're there. That scene's happening, and you're seeing a bunch of illegal immigrants, and you're like, who are these people, and why are we here? And, once again, Kate doesn't know why she's there. Reggie doesn't know why he's there. Of course, he's the one who's just like, I'm going to find out right now because I'm tired of walking along with these guys. And I just think it's interesting that our attentions can be held that long. Like, it's got to be about an hour into the movie, and that's when you finally get some concrete details. You learn that about, I think, a little bit... no, you don't learn about the tunnels here, but you learn about the cartel and how they're going after...
that's... I think that's exactly why you learn about the tunnels. Because that's what you... Anyways.
But yeah, we finally get some details about what their actual endgame goal is here. And of course, there is still is some details they're hiding as you learn more about Benicio del Toro's character, who I definitely want to talk about. But I think it's fascinating that we can be along for the ride up until this point with very minimal information. And still my attention was held the entire time.
That's the thing I don't understand. Like, I know that you're saying that the way that they do it is like you're in her world, you sort of experience things as she's experiencing them. But there are just so many other things I don't think that you and I don't know the decisions that the director's making that makes it work, because kind
of right. Let's not sell Taylor Sheridan short.
The scripts of this film is fantastic.
Who I just want to bring up because I did not realize this. If you watch Sons of Anarchy,
don't say.
I won't. There will be no spoilers. But Taylor Sheridan is an actor in that, and I was like, wait, what? I was very surprised to see that. And this is I mean, like, obviously he must have done some writing or maybe worked on shorts. But as far as his IMDb listings go, this is his only writing credit. And I was like, wow, I mean, it's very well written. So the guy obviously knows what he's doing. So props to him. And whoever took the pitch and said, hey, let's make this into a damn good movie, because they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a wonderful script. And I think he's he and Denis Villeneuve did some really... Were very careful about how to carry the audience through the movie. Because like you're saying, even as we're, trying to figure it out ourselves, is we don't really understand how there's such few answers, yet you're along for the ride the entire time. And you're perfectly okay with it.
Yeah.
So
once we crack that, that's when we're going straight to the top, right?
Yeah, and actually, just on that, I actually wanted to say, when I was watching this movie, when I was, you were beside me, and I was sitting there, and the entire time I was thinking, Paul's not liking this movie.
Really?
That's what I was thinking.
Really?
The entire time.
Interesting.
Literally the entire time. And I thought you were going to, when the movie ended, I thought you were going to look at me and be like, So I'm actually thrilled that you loved this movie. I did not think this was a Paul movie.
Alright, I'm really curious. Why did you think it was not
Because
a Paul movie?
I thought you would definitely not be okay with the way the movie was doing exactly what it was doing, in the sense that we were blind as to what's going on, and it was just this very intense, very slow and deliberate build for like the first hour with almost like no real goals. Like, you don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
What the characters are doing. They're just doing something, and you're watching them, and you're living it. And I thought you would not be okay with that. I really did. So
you are not wrong.
Yeah.
I don't like Inherent Vice for that.
I mean, we all know your opinion of Gravity, and that's kind of in a similar...
Okay, you know what? At some point, we will watch Gravity again, and we'll have this discussion. This is a big, long thing between he and I. But we'll stick around this movie.
He's wrong.
Anyways,
before we go anywhere, let's talk about Benicio del Toro. We have to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah. All right, I'll let the whole why I like this film.
Okay. Well, no, if you want to talk about that, by all means.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why generally I don't like those kind of films is because they don't give you enough information, and you're supposed to know it, or it makes you, or it's doing it to try and hold your attention, but then the scenes in front of you mean so little. Right, and it's like only on a second viewing that you actually understand the value of this scene. And I think what Sicario did really well is that the scenes in front of us meant something important and substantial to us at first, and you know that on a second viewing it would have just as much and even more value to us, because there's always something that we can hold on to that will keep our attention through the scene, but there's also miles and miles of subtext underneath it. Yeah. And I think other films usually just have the thing that you're supposed to know and nothing that was sort of of immediate interest. And I think that's why I like Sicario, and it's not the fact that I don't like films that withhold information and actually think. I mean, when I made my short film, that's generally what I was trying to do. It's just sort of the execution on most films falls way short, and I think that's why I love this film. But anyways, Del Toro, he's important.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring him up because he deserves to be talked about. I mean, he's... Yeah, I don't want to say he's disappeared over the last few years. He's obviously been making movies, but, I think he won an Academy Award for Traffic, did he not? I'm pretty sure he did.
I haven't seen Traffic.
Okay, either way, he was fantastic in that. And he kind of just went off the grid a little bit ever since then. He's been in kind of smaller movies that people aren't paying attention to.
When was Traffic?
Oh, I mean, that movie was 2003 or 2004.
Because that's after The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, yeah, definitely after.
Because Usual Suspects is pretty early.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's great to see him back in a role that people are really digging, because he's a fantastic actor. He plays his character with the perfect sort of edge of confidence and coolness, but also... like you were talking about, the sort of a vulnerability that's hidden deep somewhere. You see it with the handshaking, and it comes up again at the very end when he's confronting Kate. And this is a really intense scene. Just like Prisoners, it feels like the climax is over, and it's not. There's still something intense going on after.
Which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant too. And so, we're in this scenario where he's telling her, you gotta sign this paper, and she thinks it's morally wrong, of course, because that's her standpoint. And, he brings out the gun and he says, you're going to be committing suicide. That's a line you mentioned you loved a lot.
You just butchered the line so bad.
Yeah, well, I'm not acting it.
It's the fact that, he goes through a number of different methods or like pleas in terms of trying to get her to do it. And it's not the fact he says like, I'm threatening you, you're gonna be committing suicide. It's like it's much more of it was a much more softer tactic of almost like,
this is what I wanted
I'm
to bring
sorry.
up. Is like he's in a very vulnerable state here. He mentions early on in the movie, "You remind me of someone that was very close to me, or that was important
I wrote
to
it
me."
down.
Yeah,
It's something like that.
Yeah, and we come to learn that it's his daughter. He says that at the end. He says, "You remind me of my daughter." And as we know, Josh Brolin tells us that I believe his wife was beheaded by the cartels and his daughter was thrown into a vat of acid, which is terrible. So obviously this scarred him.
Holy crap, I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
That's, oh my God,
gives
horrible.
him the motivation that he's doing these things. That's why he is the character he is. He is going to be on whatever side gets him closer to finding the people who did this to him. It doesn't matter if it's a government agency, the Colombian cartel who he may or may not be working with. I'm not entirely sure. It's a little nebulous. But in this scene, he is very vulnerable because it's not that he's necessarily threatening Kate. He's almost pleading her. He's begging her, just sign the paper. There's, she starts crying a little bit and he wipes away her tears as, it's
actually, he's got a gun underneath
as he has a gun underneath her chin.
And it's just the craziest part of this is that you care about Del Toro. You actually
absolutely.
I'm so sad that you're heartbroken. Oh, right, you have a gun against someone's head, but I don't care. And that's just... That blows my mind. That's so awesome.
I think, to both Taylor Sheridan and Dennis Villeneuve's credit, I did not know what the outcome of this scene was going to be. Very much in the same way that when Prisoners was in its ending state, it could have gone multiple ways. And I was like...
I still talked about the ending.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's gripping. Like, I was literally clenching my seat, just like, I don't know what's going to happen. I like both these characters. There's like a 50% chance one of them is not going to leave this room.
Oh, I think there was a 50-50 of one of them not leaving the room, but we knew which one was not going to be leaving the room if someone died.
Yeah, and I mean, it's done so well, and I think Del Toro played that part absolutely perfectly. And again, that's that sort of vulnerability that he shows. It's hidden deep away, like, his heart is stone now in order to do the things he's doing, but there's still that remnant of humanity left, and I think that's where we see it.
Well, I think the thing is like, if his heart was stone, he wouldn't be doing any of this stuff, right? And it's the fact that he has this little engine, not the little engine that could, but just a little tiny human engine in his heart that is the main reason why he's doing this, because if he really didn't care, he wouldn't do any of this stuff. Or like, if he lost all faith or what have you, it seems like his character doesn't care. Or like, a lot of these characters like don't care, or they're just ruthless or whatever. But it's very cliche to say this, but it's like he cares too much. Right? He cares so much.
He's like basically walking vengeance.
Yeah,
like that's what he is. And
that's really neat because another thing that you had mentioned about Del Toro is like often a lot of characters that are played because like this character's not something that we've never seen before. It's something we haven't seen.
Revenge movies are a dime a dozen, and we get a lot of these characters, but rarely are they portrayed.
Yeah, and
like this.
The thing that brings it around is, holy crap! I just lost it. Whatever. It's
on the 6 o'clock news tonight.
Basically, it's his humanity, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure as soon as we end the video, I'll remember, but...
Well, just to go the other way for a bit, too, is I think the interesting thing is we go to Josh Brolin's character, the only other character we haven't really talked about, and he's very nonchalant, but the interesting thing is he's actually using everyone. I mean, you finally learn the reason, because it was actually one of the lingering questions I had throughout the entire movie, is I was like, why the hell is Kate in this movie? Like, why is she part of this? Why did... I mean, I can understand her motivation to do it.
Yeah,
but why did Josh Brolin want her to be part of it? And we get an answer, and it's almost deflating. It's like so bland and terrible of an answer that you're like, really? It's that? But I mean that in a good way. Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. But it's disappointing for her. It's like, this is the whole reason you want to be around. And it's because they just need a liaison from a domestic government agency to operate so that the paperwork would all look legal. That's it. That's the only reason. And it's deflating. It's terrible.
Well, it just piles onto the themes, right?
Yeah.
And it crushes. The reason it works so well is it answers any questions that someone might have, like, why is this character here? Why her? The one thing it might be able to answer is like, well, why does he want Kate instead of another character, but you can be like, he knows she's gonna want to stay, she wants vengeance, and all that. Okay, so that's answered. It piles onto the theme, and not only that, it answers one question, and then it gives them motivation for why like the characters should not go with them, but it gives her the reason of like, okay, now I have to go with them to the tunnels.
Yeah.
Right? Like she loses so much, and like I'm literally just here because they want me to be. So if I go, they'll figure something out. So now I have to go and I have to find out that answer. So it's just it answers one question and then gives them motivation of another. That's brilliant, right?
And similarly, he's essentially using Benicio del Toro too.
I think he's okay with that. Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, like he's well, yeah. I mean, Benicio del Toro, like Alejandro, that character wants is vengeance, right? He wants revenge for what happened to his family. So of course he knows he's being used by these people because all Josh Brolin wants is for him to go kill the drug dealers, to go kill the cartel leader, and he's using that vengeance. He's using that character's anger as a weapon. And
I don't know if
fascinating.
using it's like an agreement, but yeah.
I don't think it's an agreement. I think he's definitely using that. Like I think Benicio del Toro is very aware that he's being used, but he's okay with it just in the sense that it's going to get him what he wants.
Yep.
So there might be some mutual agreement there, but it's definitely just Josh Brolin sitting in the background wearing his sandals, like just enjoying the show. Yeah, just like she's going to do exactly what I need her to do. This guy's going to go kill him. We're all happy now. I think that's fascinating. So, and
why don't we, before we get too far away from it, why don't we just end off with like the ending itself? Like because we talked about like Del Toro actually using the gun using the gun as a weapon of threatening on Kate. But then there's the actual moment of her actually walking out onto the balcony and pointing the gun at Del Toro and ultimately not pulling the trigger. And I think that's a pretty interesting and telling moment. I think that's really good one.
For me, it's that. Like what I want to say about it is, I think there's a lot of. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of gray area in this movie that you're not really sure. I mean, like you obviously, as the viewer, want to side with Kate and her stance of like this is wrong. Like we can't be doing this. But then, Matt points out, Josh Brolin's character points out a very factual thing where he says, "Is what you're doing working?
It's a very sobering thought.
Yeah. Do you see less bombs? Do you see less people killing each other? Do you see less drugs going across the border?" The answer is no. She says no. She knows it's not working.
Okay.
And I think that's a very interesting point. So it's like by the end of the movie, I think in a way she's kind of come to this realization. And maybe she's not okay with it. Obviously she's not okay with it. It took her quite a bit to sign that piece of paper.
Yeah.
But she knows at the end of the day that what Benicio del Toro did kind of worked. In the sense that he got the job done. Cartel leader is dead.
Here's my thing. So you go, okay, so it worked. You got that cartel, right? And you think, okay, that could be a nice little ending to the movie. But then the kid comes back.
Yes.
Right?
Well, okay, before we talk about this, I do want to talk about Silvio's character leading up to that. So
okay,
that is the actual ending of the movie, which we'll get to.
Before we get to a Silvio thing, then we'll just wrap up this whole thing. For me, with Kate, it brought up something that is always brought up in a lot of these kind of movies, but it still hit me. It was still the thing. Is there are characters who are and are not. It's the whole does the ends justify the means?
Absolutely,
right? And it brought up something that I thought was quite interesting, and it sort of reinvigorated that question. I won't add more to what I want to say because it has to do with Silvio, but I'll connect that thought that I have to that. So, why don't we...
let's talk about Silvio. So this is... If I have anything... I don't want to say negative, but to critique about this, it's probably the character of Silvio. Now, I'm okay with his storyline, the general arc of it. I think it works. But I think it's too much in the middle in that there's either not enough of him or too much of him.
Yeah.
So, the problem is we're introduced to him probably... pretty early on in the movie, anyway, somewhere in the first act.
It's
either before the convoy scene or after, right after. It's one or the other. And we just periodically get him coming home from work. We don't know what work is. and his son keeps saying, let's play soccer together. And he's always tired. It's always daytime, so he's doing night work.
Mm.
And that's the only context we get him in for a little while. And as the scenes go on, you see a little bit more, like, she asks him, he asks, his son asks the mother, where's Dad? Oh, he's working tonight.
Mm.
And then, we see another scene where there's a rifle in the room.
She says that, like, he's working tonight when he's dead. I'm pretty sure.
No, that scene happened before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
So either way, we get a little breadcrumbs throughout. But I think it's obvious very early on, probably from the first scene, that he's part of something's going on and he's part of the drug trade.
Something to do with drugs.
Yeah. Because, like, a character that disconnected that we're paying attention to has to be pulled into the story somehow.
Yeah.
And you find out that he's actually transporting drugs. He's actually a cop, I believe.
Yep, he's state police.
Yeah, and
or something like that.
He's working with the cartels to bring the drugs maybe across the border. We're not really sure where the drugs are going.
I think it's across the border because you meet him, and he sort of has that connection with Alejandro. In the tunnel.
That would be my guess. And then he ends up getting wrapped up into the storyline because Alejandro uses him to pull over the drug lord's, I think, brother. And then it's a little convoluted there. Yeah, I think cousin or brother who comes across the border. Yeah.
Excuse me.
And I think it's not an entirely satisfying arc to where he goes. Like, I feel like he should have been the key component. If they're going to introduce this character that we just periodically visit and is very mysterious, but we obviously know is going to be part of the cartel, I think he should be the key, the linchpin into getting at the drug lord. And he isn't. He's just one step away from the linchpin, which is the cousin/brother. I'm sorry, we're not totally clear on that. Who, Benicio del Toro then takes hostage to get to the house and kill the drug lord. I think it's just one step too removed. It gives him, it distances him too much from being an important character. It feels like a sort of an unnecessary step somewhere in there. I feel like he should have been the most important thing that they need to get to the drug lord in order to make that totally work.
One thing that I think could also have done is, like, maybe they did and I just haven't thought about it, is that he could have had a significant weight to the sort of thematic or the themes that they brought up and saying, like, through his choices, this happens to him or that happens, or, like, we all descend into hell no matter what he tries, whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't even think they necessarily do that with him.
Well, no, because that's what I said. If you're gonna do something like that, then you need more of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's the one sort of weakness, the weak area in this movie. But however, it does bring us to the very ending scene, which I do think is significant because we get all this stuff with Kate and her moral choices, and then the ending where she decides not to kill Benicio del Toro for reasons that you can think of yourself as the viewer. You might take different meanings from that. But then we get the scene where finally Silvio's son gets to play soccer, and it's with his mom, because at this point Silvio's dead. So they're out playing soccer, and then gunshots go off. And everybody just stops, and there's this stillness. They wait 5-10 seconds. Nothing else happens. Then I'll go back to playing soccer.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the movie.
And some people might be like, what the fuck? Why is this scene here? And the point that I wanted to bring up with Kate is that there's a line that her boss says to her, is that, do you get the vibe that we're winning?
Yeah, that's the moment I was talking about. And she says no.
That's not Matt then. Because you said Matt said that to her.
Oh, my mistake, yeah. Right. I guess that probably was him, yeah.
Okay, so that's why I was a little bit confused. Okay, so it's her boss. Because she comes up to her boss saying, like, look, we can arrest this person or freeze or whatever. Like, we can do stuff. And her boss basically says, like, look, I don't have that power. But even if I do have that power, do you think we're winning?
Yeah.
Right? And it goes, do you get the vibe that we're winning? And so I brought up the whole idea of, like, okay, ends justify the means. Yes, no, I guess so, because Del Toro eventually got the cartel. But then the very last scene was shown is that even though they got rid of Del Toro says in the middle of the film, it goes, to find him, or the, I'm terribly sorry, I don't actually know what the villain's name is.
I don't know. He's only mentioned in name, but we only see him up in for 5 minutes.
So anyways, to find that guy, he says to find him is to find the vaccine.
Yes.
Right? Yet, even if they, quote-unquote, find the vaccine, they kill him, the very next scene is, normal people still hearing gunshots and having to live in this kind of shitty world. So he goes, the ends justify the means, ... or do they? And I think that's essentially what the film says.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's a statement about... It's a very cyclical nature to everything. Vengeance leads to more vengeance, to anger, to hatred, to killing, which leads to more killing. And it's just the world that they have to live in. That we have to live in, that everyone lives in. Whether we want to deny it or not. And I think that's where Silvio's storyline works, because it at least brings us to that moment. So I guess it works and it doesn't work. But I think that ending does work very well. I think it leaves us with that question. And just that realization that no matter what you do, it's never going to stop, really. Like, it's always going to be there, and you just have to live with it. Like, you stop for a moment, and then you just go right back to it, and you live.
I think another good thing that it does is that with the sort of, like, denouement, is that what it is? When that sort of thing. What's happened sometimes is they become, like, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes long, and it just, like, you lose any sort of sense of rhythm or emotional momentum that you had, where, like, at the end of the film, generally you want your most impactful thought, question, moment to happen, and then, like, as quickly as you can, black. And then just let the audience kind of sit there for a second and sort of just toil away in those emotions. At least that's my understanding, that's my feeling. And the film makes this sequence short enough that you still have that moment of sort of sitting in there being like, damn, this sucks, right? One thing I was taught in when I was learning about acting and drama and all this sort of stuff is that, like, my teacher said, and I actually wanted to see what your thoughts were on it. It says the best thing you can get out of an audience is not, a standing up applause and yeah, is just a second and a half of silence right as the credits roll. Whereas there's sort of a stunned silence for a moment.
I think it's pretty contextual, to
be
honest.
Sure, musicals, okay, whatever. But even then, I think most films can kind of give you, like, if you do it properly, you can get left with a sort of something to think about. Something that I think essentially what it means is that it's preoccupying you with a thought. Yeah. Something to think about. That you're more important. If that's more important than clapping.
It might be. I think it depends on what you want. I think in Sicario, it works very well. And I think in a lot of movies, it does work. You look at something like, No Country for Old Men, which I brought up before, and I think it ends in a very similar way. It leaves you with a question, a moment to think about. But I think it's all contextual. It depends what you want. And that may be a discussion for another day. Maybe a video.
Yeah, very true. Other than that, we've gotten to the end of the film, which means we've run into this video. Thanks again for joining us. Hopefully you got something out of it. This is Second Perspective. Thanks for watching QQ.
Thank you.
And Paul, Nathan, we're cool. Take care.